Punta, punta la rosa huele, que mucho duele. Tú no naciste para mí, presto aléjate de mí. Presto aléjate de mí. Acórdate de aquella hora que yo te besaba la boca. Aquella hora ya pasó, dolor quedó al corazón. Dolor quedó al corazón. Montañas altas y mares hondas, llévame donde mi querido, llévame donde mi amor, el que me dé consolación. El que me dé consolación. Esposica están al baño, esposica están al baño, vestida de colorado, échate a la mar y alcánzalo, échate a la mar y olvídame chava, a la mar y olvídame chava, si la suegra licencia me daba, échate a la mar y alcánzalo, échate a la mar. tierra de la consolación. La noche es negra y sin estrellas, no quiere dar paso el día. La lluvia golpea las campanas, tocando una melodía misteriosa. Por eso el amor no
gosh, I forgot to unmute. Silly me. All right. Well, there goes Exodus 30. Oh, I won't say down the drain, but okay. I'm not gonna go back over it. Well, I'll go back over it. What the heck? Let's go back over Exodus 30. Never hurts to repeat. Repetition is very good for learning. Okay, we'll start at the beginning of Exodus 30 this time, hopefully with the sound. Let me just make sure. Sound check. Can someone let me know? There you go. Okay, yeah, I forgot to unmute the mic. Silly me. Okay, okay, let's try again. Beginning of Exodus chapter 30. Okay. Once again, a couple of things with notes to reading. I've been trying lately to increase the ancient biblical, or my attention to ancient biblical sounds, or what they believe might be ancient biblical sounds. So just bear with me. It's still a little bit clunky. Specifically, as I've mentioned in previous studies, I'm trying to make a distinction in tone between the kamats and the patach. This is the patach here. This is the kamats over here. So the kamats should be somewhere between an a sound and an o sound, somewhere between a patach and a cholon. So it should be like an ah, and that's what I've been trying to do. But I'm still getting used to it. So if I make it, if it sounds a little bit clunky or I make a little mistakes there, please excuse me. Okay, other than that, let's get going. We're going to start again. Exodus chapter 30, verse 1. Asita mizbech miktar toret atse shitim. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Exodus chapter 11 is where we're starting. We did that last week. Okay, verse 11. So we're in Exodus chapter 30, verse 11. And it's the other thing. I've done a lot of research lately and seen a video series in particular, which has greatly convinced me that Yehovah may not be the correct pronunciation, that the person promulgating this pronunciation is actually very flawed in his scholarship and is somewhat of a charlatan, but we'll get back to that in coming weeks. So for now, I'm going to pronounce it as Yehovah, but we'll more news about that in coming weeks, as I've said in the past. Okay. Vaydaber Yehovah el Moshe lemor כי תישא את ראש בני ישראל לפקודיהם ונתנו איש כופר נפשו ליהוה לפקוד אותם ולא יהיה בהם נרף לפקוד אותם. verse 13. זה ייתנו כל העובר על הפקודים מחצית השקל בשקל הקודש 20 גרה השקל מחצית השקל תרומה ליהוה. כל העובר על הפיקודים מבין 20 שנה ומעלה ייתן תרומת יהוה. verse 15. העשיר לא ירבה וחדל לא ימעיט במחצית השקל לתת את תרומת יהוה לכפר על נפשותיכם. ולקחת את כסף הכיפורים מאת בני ישראל ונתת אותו על עבודת אוהל מועד והיה לבני ישראל לזיכרון לפני יהוה לכפר על נפשותיכם. verse 17. וידבר יהוה אל משה לאמור ועשית כאור נחושת וחנו נחושת לרעצה ונתת אותו בין אוהל מועד ובין המזבח ונתת שמה מים ורחצו אהרון ובנו ממנו את ידיהם ואת רגליהם. verse 20. בבואם אל אוהל מועד ירחצו מים ולא ימותו או בגישתם אל המזבח לשרת להקטיר אישה ליהוה ורחצו ידיהם ורגליהם ולא ימותו והייתה להם חוק עולם לא ולזערו לדורותם. verse 22. And I'm very into, anyone who knows me knows for years, decades actually, I've been very into herbs and spices and stuff like that. So these are some of my favorite verses, the rest of chapter 30. Okay. verse 22. וידבר יהוה אל משה לאמור ואתה קח לך בשמים ראש מור דרור 500 וקינמון בשם מחציתו 50 ומאתיים קנה בושם 50 ומאתיים וקידה 500 בשקל הקודש ושמן זית הין ועשית אותו שמן משחת קודש רוקח, מרקחת מעשה רוקח שמן משחת קודש יהיה. Verse 26. ומשחת בו את אוהל מועד ואת ארון העדות ואת השולחן ואת כל כליו ואת המנורה ואת כליה ואת מזבח הקטורת. Verse 28. ואת מזבח העולה ואת כל כליו ואת הכיור ואת קנו וקידשת אותם והיו קודש קודשים כל הנוגע בהם יקדש. אוקיי, ואת אהרון ואת בניו תמשוך וקידשת אותם לכהן לי ואל בני ישראל תדבר לאמור שמן משחת קודש יהיה זה לי לדורותיכם. Verse 32. על בשר אדם לא ייסח ובמתכונתו לא תעשו כמוהו קודש הוא קודש יהיה לכם איש אשר ירקח כמוהו ואשר ייתן ממנו על זר ונכרת מעמו. It's interesting that it's not just Aaron and the Levites who are anointed with the oil, it's the vessels are anointed as well, right? The Ohel Moed itself is anointed. Okay, verse 34, the incense. ויאמר יהוה אל משה, קח לך סמים, נטף, שחלת, חלבונה, סמים ולבונה, זכה, בד, בבד יהיה, ועשית קטורת רוקח, מעשה רוקח, ממולח טהור קודש, ושחקת ממנו הדק, ונתת ממנו לפני העדות באוהל מועד, אשר יועד לך שמה, קודש קודשים תהיה לכם, וקטורת אשר תעשה במתכונתה לא תעשו לכם, קודש תהיה לך ולך ליהוה. איש אשר יעשה כמוהו להריח בה ונכרת מעמו. That's in chapter 30. Now we'll go on to chapter 31. וידבר יהוה אל משה לאמור ראה קראתי בשם בסלאל בן אורי בן חור למטה יהודה, and we've spoken about this guy Hur before. Hur was the same guy who held the rock for Moshe when they were fighting the Amalekites back in Exodus 21 or so, Exodus 17. Right? Moshe Aaron, here we are in Exodus 17. And also in Exodus 24, let's see who is mentioned. Also is kind of an assistant to Moshe. So this guy Hur from the tribe of Yehuda is very important within Israel, but we'll talk about that more later. Okay? So, ראה קראתי בשם בצלאל בן אורי בן חור למטה יהודה ועמלא אותו רוח אלוהים בחוכמה ובתבונה ובדעת ובכל מלאכה לחשוב מחשבות לעשות בזהב ובכסף בנחושת ובחרושת אבן למלאות ובחרושת עץ לעשות בכל מלאכה. Verse 6. ואני הנה נתתי איתו את אחו ליאוב בן אחיסמך. So this is Bezalel's assistant, Aholiav ben Ahisamach. למטה דן, and I'm curious to see if he appears in the context in these coming chapters. Okay. Ben Ahisamach. למטה דן, ובלב כל חכם לב. נתתי חוכמה ועשו את כל אשר ציוויתיך, ואת אוהל מועד, ואת הארון, לא, עדות, ואת הכפורת, אשר עליו, ואת כל כלי האוהל, ואת השולחן, ואת כליו, ואת המנורה הטהורה, ואת כל כליה, ואת מזבח הקטורת, ואת מזבח העולה, ואת כליו, ואת הכיאור, ואת קנו. Verse 10. ואת בגדי השרוד, ואת בגדי הקודש לאהרון הכהן, ואת בגדי בניו לכהן, ואת שמן המשחה, ואת קטורת הסמים לקודש, ככל אשר ציוויתיך יעשו. Okay, so that brings us to the end of verse 11. So now we're in Exodus 31, verse 12. Okay, and now we're done pretty much. So that's the anointing and the craftsman. Now we switch over to a couple of other things, right? And this is the Shabbat we're going to be speaking about here, verse 12. ويومر يهوى el Moshe lemor, ואתה דבר אל בני ישראל לאמור, אך את שבתותי תשמרו, כי אות היא ביני ובניכם לדורותיכם, לא דעת כי אני יהוה מקדישכם, ושמרתם את השבת, כי קודש היא לכם. מחלליה מות יומות, כי כל העושה בה מלאכה ונכרתה הנפש ההיא בקרב עמיה. 6 ימים יעשה מלאכה, וביום השביעי שבת, שבתון, קודש ליהוה. כל העושה מלאכה ביום השבת מות יומת. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל, אות היא לעולם, כי 6 ימים עשה יהוה את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינופש. So this is now, well, Shabbat's been mentioned a number of times. It was mentioned in Exodus 20 as part of the 10 Commandments. It's mentioned again explicitly. It's mentioned in the case of the manna, right? That they should not gather, the Israelites should not gather the manna on the Shabbat. And I think those are the 3 places. I might be forgetting another place. So I always say we can see the importance of a law, of a mitzvah in the Torah by how many times it appears. And that being said, the Shabbat is obviously a very important law because it appears here and it appears other times as well. So the Shabbat is extremely important to the Torah, to Yehovah. The reasoning is given here. There are different reasonings given in Exodus 20. The reasoning is given so that everybody can have a rest, right? Including the most low, those of the most downtrodden classes, such as slaves and even the animals. Here we're given another reason, and that's that Yehovah rested on the 7th day. I guess that's another mention of the Shabbat in Genesis 1 when Yehovah rested, although not explicitly. And so we see that Shabbat is extremely, extremely important. It's a sign. It's an ot. An ot is used in the Torah to signify something that is done, something that other people can physically see or sense that is done in order to make a statement, shall we say, or as a visible or perceivable sign that can be perceived by others. So, okay. 1 second, please. Oops. Right. So, what would be some other examples of a sign? So, in Exodus 13, we have the example of keeping Chag HaMatzot is a sign by eating the matzot, by bringing the Passover offering. That's a sign. Of course, the rabbis misinterpret those verses to say that they're speaking about tefillin, which is absolute baloney. You can even see it in the context there. That has nothing to do with tefillin. that bringing the Passover offering and keeping the 7 days of eating matzot is a sign, right? So other people will see, or it's something visible we do. Why the Israelites, they're not eating leavened bread for these 7 days? Oh, okay, that causes a question to be asked. What's going on here? This is a sign that Yehovah brought them out of Egypt. Okay, why the Israelites not working? Everybody else is running around doing their work or doing the errands on Shabbat. Why the Israelites not working on Shabbat? That's a sign. That's a visible sign that must mean something, right? So that's the idea of a sign, right? It's something visible, it's something perceivable in this world, which serves as kind of a sign, a flag, or a notification to everyone else. There, that's a nice word to use in this day and age. A notification to everybody else that, and maybe to the Israelites themselves, and maybe to Yehovah, that something is going on here. That there's a reason that they're doing this differently from the rest of the nations. Okay. So that's that. Verse 18. So that's the Shabbat. We are now in Exodus chapter 31, verse 18. And okay, here we go. Moses is about to get the tablets. Waitin el Moshe kichalato lidaber ito behar Sinai shnei luchot ha edut luchot even ketuvim ba'etzba Elohim. So let's just get just a little perspective. I should really do this in the afternoon. So this is all instructions, right? The Israelites haven't done anything yet. This is all instructions to Moses. And he's still up on the mountain, right? So let's get a little perspective here. Let's go back. So here we go. So in Exodus 24, okay, so we have a bunch of laws. So Moses received the 10 commandments. The Israelites received the 10 commandments in Exodus 20. Right. So in Exodus 24, Moses goes back up to the mountain. Right? So Moses is now, as far as I can, maybe we should even go back further. I should really do this in the afternoon study, but let's do it very quickly here. All right, I'm not going to go, I could do that in the afternoon study. But we know that in Exodus 24, okay, so Moses is called back up onto the mountain here in Exodus 24, 12. Yomer Yehovah el Moshe aleh elai hahora wahayeh sham wa'etna lecha et luchot ha'even wa'torah wa'hamitzvah asher katavti lidorotam. Right? So here he's going to give him the luchot ha'even. He's going to give him the stone tablets. And on top of the stone tablets, he's going to give him instructions and commandments, which I've written asher katavti lehorotam. Okay, so that's obviously got to be referring to the tablets, right? So let's read this verse again. Yomer Yehovah el Moshe aleh elai hahara v'hayeh sham v'itna lecha luchot ha'even. I will give to you the stone tablets v'hatorah v'hamitzvah asher katavti lehorotam. Well, is that referring to the stone tablets? Was something else written down? We don't see any evidence of anything else written down. So I would infer here that that when it says HaTorah or HaMitzvah, it's speaking about what's going to be written on the Luchot HaEvan, what's going to be written on the stone tablets. V'kam Moshe v'Yeshua mi sharto v'al Moshe el har Elohim. So Moshe went up to the mountain of God. Remember, this mountain, Mount Sinai, is already called Har Elohim. Already back in the beginning of Exodus, when Moshe is shepherding Jethro's sheep out into the desert, and he comes upon Har Elohim. So this is the very same mountain. And in the burning bush episode, Yehovah says to Moshe, "This is the sign that I am God. The Israelites or the children of Israel will come worship me on this mountain." So here they are. Okay. ולזקנים אמר שבו לנו בזה עד אשר נשוב אליכם והנה אהרון וחור עמכם מבעל דברים, מבעל דברים ייגש עליהם. So, okay, so, Moshe and Yeshua, so Moshe and Yeshua went up, and the Zkenim, the elders, he left Israel with the elders, and Aaron and Hur. So here's Hur again. Hur is the same guy who was the grandfather of Bezalel, right? It's Bezalel ben Uri ben Hur. So this is the same guy, Hur. Okay? So Hur is left in charge. So Aaron and Hur are left in charge of the Israelites along with the elders, while Moshe and Yeshua go up to the mountain. And this is in Exodus 24. Verse 15, وَيْعَلْ مُوشَ إِلَى هَارْ وَيْخَسَ عَنَانٍ at the Har. So Moshe went up, and the entire mountain was covered with clouds. وَيِشْقَنْ كَvod Yehovah al Har Sinai, and the glory of Yehovah descended or dwelt upon Mount Sinai. Chaseo even sheshet yamim vayikra el Moshe biyom hashvi'i mitoch ha'enan. Okay, so for 6 days, the glory, the cloud, God's glory, which was in the cloud, descended upon Har Sinai. And then on the seventh day, right, there we go, the theme of seventh day, Shabbat, we just spoke about the Shabbat, right? Moshe, so God calls out to Moshe on the seventh day. So Moshe's up there 6 days, nothing's going on. I won't say nothing's going on, lots going on, but Yehovah has not yet spoken to Moshe. He speaks to him on the seventh day. And so the appearance of the glory of God is like a consuming fire, like a continuously burning fire, shall we say, on the head of the mountain, le'enei bnei Israel, to the eyes of Bnei Israel. In other words, that's the way they perceived it, right? It's interesting that this word le'enei bnei Israel, that's the way they perceived it from down on the bottom of the mountain. I think that implies that Moshe perceived it differently. He's in the cloud, basically, right? He's up on top of the mountain. He's inside the cloud. Obviously, he's not getting, burned up by fire. Maybe he is, and miraculously, like Daniel in the Tanur is being saved. But at any rate, Moshe is up on top of the mountain. Yavo Moshe b'toch enan v'al el har v'hi Moshe b'har 40 yom v'arba'im laila. Okay, so then Moshe went into the cloud and went up to the top of the mountain, and Moshe was in the mountain a total of 40 days and 40 nights. Okay, so this is Moshe's 40 days and 40 nights in the mountain. The first 6 days, the cloud descends. Okay. The seventh day, Yehovah speaks to Moshe, and that goes on until the 40th day. So I guess if we do our math correctly, for another 40 minus 7, for another 33 days or so, 40 days is what? 7 times 5 is 5 weeks. So 5 weeks and 5 days, right? So almost 6 weeks. So for the first week, so for 5 weeks, Yehovah is communicating with Moshe, right? Uidaber Yehovah el Moshe lemor, and then we get the whole thing, right? Now we have all of the stuff. This is the entire descriptions of the tabernacle. In some places it says, as I've showed you, right? So obviously it's kind of a visual going on as well. But this is what's going on in these 40 days that Moshe is up on the mountain, right? He's getting all the instructions basically for the tabernacle. Okay? So here's the tabernacle, all of the details of the tabernacle. The ephod, the consecration of the priests, etc. The order of the sacrifices, blah, blah, blah. Right? The incense altar, the atonement money, the bronze basin. And that's where we're up to right now, okay? So that's what's going on. Okay, Moshe is called up for 40 days. The entire purpose of Moshe's journey up to the mountain with Yoshua for these 40 days is not really to give laws per se, okay? Except for the Shabbat, right? So it's interesting that the one law that Moshe gets on those 40 days, right, because he's still up in the mountain, okay, is the Shabbat. Besides that, what we're getting is instructions and visualizations on what the tabernacle should look like, right? The details of the tabernacle. Now, remember, the Israelites have not yet built the tabernacle. That's going to occur later. it's going to be described again in great detail. Okay, but that's what Moshe is getting for those 40 days. Basically a blueprint, right? A worded and visual blueprint, maybe just a visual blueprint that was then written down in words for the tabernacle. Okay. And then the only law that's given is, besides the laws related to the tabernacle, is Shabbat. It's interesting. And then Moshe gets the tablets, right? So remember back in Exodus 24, I should open this in a new tab. In Exodus 24, let's leave it in English. This came up in English, right? Now let's look in Hebrew. It's easier for me actually. Right. So what did Moshe say? So in Exodus chapter 24, verse 12, Yahweh calls Moshe and Yeshua up to the mountain. Says, "But nalacha luchot even u'hatorah u'hamitzvah asher katavti lehorotam." Okay. So I will give you the stone tablets. So that's Moshe. That's God says to Moshe in chapter 24, right? And maybe a Torah or a mitzvah asher katavti lehorotam. Maybe that means also part of the written Torah, right? That which became the Torah. Okay, maybe the entire written Torah, maybe part of the written Torah. We don't know. Okay. But this is where God says he's going to give Moshe the luchot even, the stone tablets, and that is now only occurring in Exodus 31. This is now occurring where he's getting the stone tablets. That's after the 40 days are over, towards the end of the 40 days, after Moshe had gotten all of the instructions regarding the tabernacle, and after Moshe had been told about the Shabbat, right? That would seem to be the final thing. And now finally Moshe is receiving the tablets. Okay, and that's where we are. So that's just to put things a little bit into perspective and into chronological order, okay? Because we think, oh, Moshe went up and he got the tablets and came right down. No, he was up there for 40 days getting instructions on the details of the Mishkan, and then only at the end is he getting the tablets and getting the law of Shabbat, right? So again, we see how important, how central the Shabbat is. There are a number of things that are very central in the Torah, which the Torah just, you could say harps on. No, that's the wrong word. Is obsessed with, right? So murder, I would say idol worship is number one. Murder is number two. It's really, it's maybe difficult to know which is more important in the Tanakh, which is considered a greater sin, idol worship or murder, right? Idol worship seems to be mentioned a lot more than murder even. So primary sin would seem to be idol worship, the worship of other gods, even worse than murder, at least on the same level as murder, right? And then after that, one of the top top mitzvot, the mitzvot that appears the most in the Torah is the Shabbat, right? Is the Shabbat, and in the Tanakh as well. Although in the Tanakh, per se, it's not mentioned as much. But again, there's repetition. There's many times that the Shabbat is mentioned, and it's mentioned as an ot, a visible sign for other nations, for Israel themselves, and for God, shows the importance of the Shabbat. And so it's not coincidental that the Shabbat is the law that, aside from the details of the Mishkan, that the law that's given has to do that is the law of the Shabbat. Okay, so here Moshe receives the tablet. Let's get back to reading. We're in Exodus chapter 31, verse 18. Wa yitin el Moshe kihalato lidaber ito bahar Sinai shne luchot ha'idut luchot even ktuvim ba'etzba Elohim Wayar ha'am ki boshesh Moshe yoredet min hahar Wayikahel ha'am al Aharon ויאמרו אליו קום עשה לנו אלוהים אשר ילכו לפנינו כי זה משה האיש אשר העלנו מארץ מצרים, לא ידענו מה היה לו. הוא אומר עליהם, אהרון, פרקו נזמי הזהב אשר באוזני נשיכם ובניכם ובנותיכם והביאו אליי. So it's interesting. The nezim is a nose ring, right? In the noses. In the ears. So no, nezim in this case is just an earring, I guess. Okay, so the wives, the sons and the daughters all had earrings, right? The sons had earrings as well. Isn't it interesting? We don't think of ancient Israelites having earrings, right? It seems like kind of a punk teenage thing from the 1980s or something like that. But yes, the Israelite sons had earrings, right? Everyone was wearing earrings. Haviu Eli, verse 3. ויתפרקו כל העם אל את נזמי הזהב אשר באוזניהם ויביאו אל אהרון ויקח מידם ויצר אותו בחרת ויעשהו עגל מסכה ויאמרו אלה אלוהיך ישראל אשר העלוך מארץ מצרים וירא אהרון ויבן מזבח לפניו ויקרא אהרון ויאמר חג ליהוה מחר וישכימו ממחרת ויעלו עולות ויגישו שלמים וישב העם לאכול ושתו ויקימו לשחק. So this is really interesting, right? We'll have to analyze that a lot more later. I want to read that paragraph again because there's so much in there. So Exodus 32, I'm starting again in verse 1, and then we'll continue on. Wayar ha'am ki boshesh Moshe lo redet min ha'har ويكهل ha'am al Aharon ויאמרו אליו قم עשה לנו אלוהים אשר יראו לפנינו כי זה משה האיש אשר העלנו מארץ מצרים לא ידענו מה היה לו ויאמר עליהם אהרון פרקו נזמי הזהב אשר באוזני נשיכם ובניכם ובנותיכם והביאו אלי ויתפרקו כל העם את נזמי הזהב אשר באוזניהם ויביאו אל אהרון ויקח מידם ויצר אותו בחרת ויעשהו עגל מסכה ויאמרו אלה אלוהיך ישראל אשר העלוך. It's interesting. אלה אלוהיך ישראל אשר העלוך. The verb that's used here is in the plural, okay, which implies that the ele Elohecha, okay, these are your gods, okay. The Elohecha, Elohim is often, when it refers to our God, to Yahweh, is used generally with the singular verb, like always with the singular verb, maybe with some rare exceptions. Here it's used with the plural verb, which implies, okay, that that Aaron, obviously Aaron does not believe that this is God, but Aaron is signaling to the Israelites that this is not the real God, that these are false gods. Okay, these are your gods, Israel, which brought you up out of Egypt, right? Okay, but he made only one golden calf. It doesn't say multiple golden calves as far as I can see here. Okay, egel masecha. Okay, okay, these are your gods, this is not your God. These are your gods which brought you out of the land of Egypt. So Aaron is signaling to the people that this is not the true God, that this is a false God, right? By using the plural here, Asher Elucha. If it were the real God, Yehovah, then it would say here it also says Ele Elohecha. Maybe there was more than one golden calf. I don't know. At any rate, Ele Elohecha, right? It doesn't say Ze Elohecha, Asher Yisrael, Asher Elcha, okay? Elcha me Eretz Mitzrayim. It doesn't say this is your God who raised you, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. It says, these are your gods who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. Okay, we'll go on and we'll talk about that more hopefully this afternoon. Yar Aharon, Wayiven, Mizbech, Lifonav. Yeah. وَيِكْرَى أَهْرَون وَيَوْمِرْ حَغْ لِيَهْوَى مَخَار. So then he says, Chag liYehovah Machar. He says, God, a festival to Yehovah Machar. So is this some kind of syncretism, right? So the Israelites now believe that this calf, this golden calf, is a representation of Yehovah, right? Is it some kind of syncretism, right? We have we'll talk about it more this afternoon. But there were idols that were worshipped as Yehovah, right? At least some archaeologists say so, although that's up for dispute. Okay, but that may be what's going on before that. That basically, Aaron is saying to the people, "This is Yehovah. This is your God, Yehovah." Right? But obviously, by using the plural in verse 4, he's signaled to them, and of course he knows that this is not the real Yehovah. But there's some kind of syncretism going on, right? This is the replacement for Yehovah, since Moshe was a boshesh. Moshe was taking too much time up on the mountain. All right, let's go on. וישכימו ממחרת ויעלו עולות ויגישו שלומים וישב העם לאכול וישתו ויקימו לצחק. So they're having a holiday the next day for Yehovah, which is now magically been transformed into the form of a golden calf. Okay? All right, let's go on. Verse 7. וידבר יהוה אל משה לך רד כי שחט עמך אשר העלית מארץ מצרים. And I remember an old rabbi of mine when I used to learn in yeshiva many years ago said, what does it say here in verse 7? Go down, your people which you took out of Egypt has corrupted themselves, right? So he gave the example of two parents, right? And when their child does something good, it's, oh, my son has done this and my son has done that, and when the child does something bad, it's your son did this, your son did that, right? So it's the same thing. So Yehovah is basically saying, your people who you took out of Egypt, right? He's disowning them at this point, or he's saying, it's your people. I want nothing to do with these. I didn't, with these people. I didn't create this mess. You did with your horrible parenting. Any rate, that's what an old rabbi of mine used to say. At any rate, Saru Mihar Maher Min Haderech Asher Tzibitim Asu Lahem Egel Masicha Wa Ish Tahavu Lo Wa Yizbahu Lo Yomru Ele Elohecha Yisrael Asher He'lucha Me'eretz Mitzrayim. And they said, oh wow, this is so interesting, right? And they said, but it wasn't they who said, it was Aaron who said, right? Aaron said, this is your, Aaron v'yomer. Wait, where is it? Oh no, they did say, okay. They said it, okay. All right. Okay. ויאמר, verse 9, ויאמר יהוה אל משה, ראיתי את העם הזה, והנה עם קשה עורף הוא. Stiff-necked nation. ועתה הניחו לי ויחר אפי בהם ואכלם ואעשה אותך לגוי גדול. Verse 11. ויחל משה את פני יהוה אלוהיו ויאמר למה יהוה יחרה אפך בעמך אשר הוצאת מארץ מצרים בכוח גדול וביד חזקה. למה יאמרו מצרים לאמור ברעה הוציאם להרוג אותם בהרים ולכלותם מעל פני האדמה. שוב לחרון אפיך והנחם על הרעה לעמך. זכור לאברהם ליצחק ולישראל עבדיך אשר נשבעת להם בך ותדבר אליהם הרבה את זרעכם ככוכבי השמיים וכל הארץ הזאת אשר אמרתי אתן לזרעכם ונחלו לעולם. וינוחם יהוה על הרעה אשר דיבר לעשות לעמו. Wow, so that's almost like, right? This is almost like Abraham, when Abraham intercedes or attempts to intercede for Sodom, right? He speaks to Yahweh, he speaks to God, and he tries to use logic to convince him otherwise. And Moshe does essentially the same thing here, right? He tries to use logic to convince Yahweh to relent from his decision or from his intention to destroy the nation. And what's the logic, right? If you destroy all of Israel, then Egypt is going to see that, and they're going to say, "Oh, this God, took his people out into the desert to destroy them." Right? It's the same kind of thing that's going on. I mean, there's a parallelism clearly here between the way Moshe is approaching Yahweh and the way Abraham is approaching Yahweh. Okay. Verse 15. So in 32:15, why Yered Moshe minahar. So all of this time, so Moshe is up on the mountain. So now finally Moshe comes down off the mountain, right? Ushnei luchot ha'edut biyado luchot ktuvim mishnei evrehem mizeh umizeh em ktuvim. Wow, a lot to say about that one. V'yired Moshe min hahar ushnei luchot ha'edut biyado luchot ktuvim mishnei and of course, the rabbis have this ridiculous. I'll get into it in the afternoon. But they have a midrash which says that the letters went through from one side to the other, and the samech was miraculously, because the samech is a circle, right? So it was miraculous. Forget it. I'll explain this afternoon, and then you'll see how ridiculous it is. Okay. To make a long story short, the samech in Paleo Hebrew was not a circle. Okay. Wahaluchot ma'aseh Elohim hema wahamichtov michtav Elohim hu harut al haluchot. So this implies that God directly, he was the hand. It was God's hand that wrote on these tablets, right? Waishma Yehoshua et kol ha'am be're'o Yomer el Moshe kol milchama במחנה. Verse 18, ויאמר אין כל ענות גבורה ואין כל ענות חלושה, כל ענות אנוכי שומע. Okay. And actually, I think we have, believe it or not, they've just uncovered footage, actual historical footage. Let's see if I can find it. Just give me 1 second here. So this has been a recent archaeological discovery. And they found actual footage of Moshe receiving the commandments. Let me see if I can find it. 1 second here. All right, let's see if I can share this. So the recent archaeological discovery, and they've uncovered, believe it or not, they've uncovered actual footage of the giving of the Ten Commandments. So hold on a second. Here we go. Did I share it correctly? Okay.
Commanding you to obey my law. Do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. A deaf man could hear you.
What?
Nothing, I punished you. Forget it. Oh, Lord, why have you chosen me? What would you have me do for you?
I shall give you my laws, and you shall take them unto the people.
Yes, Lord. I shall give these laws unto thy people. Hear me. Oh, hear me. All pay heed. The Lord Jehovah, has given unto you these 10 commandments for all to obey.
Okay, so there we go. That's actual footage from the giving of the 10 Commandments, recently unearthed by archaeologists. The news of this should be coming out in the newspapers in coming days. Okay, back to Torah. Alrighty, so let's see where we were. Right. So so Moshe says this is not the calls of war in the in the camp. This is the calls of rejoicing, right? That he hears. Okay, so verse 19. Wahi kasher karav el hamachane vayar et ha'egel hu min cholot vaychar af Moshe vayashlech mi yadao et haluchot vayishaber otam tahat har ויקח את האל אשר עשו, וישרוף באש, ויטחן עד אשר דוק, ויזר על פני המים, וישק את בני ישראל. So that's interesting. ויאמר משה אל אהרון, מה עשה לך העם הזה, כי הבאת עליו חטאה גדולה. ויאמר אהרון אל אל יחר אף אדוני, אתה ידעת את העם כי בראהו. ויאמרו לי עשה לנו אלוהים אשר ילכו לפנינו, כי זה משה האיש אשר העלנו מארץ מצרים, לא ידענו מה היה לו. ואומר להם, למי זהב התפרקו ויתנו לי, ואשליכהו באש, ויצא העגל הזה. וירא משה אל העם, כי פרוע הוא, כי פרעה אהרון לשמצו בקומיהם. ויעמוד משה בשער המחנה, ויאמר מי ליהוה אלוהי, ויאספו אליו כל בני לוי. ויאמר להם, כה אמר יהוה אלוהי ישראל, שימו איש הרבו על ירחו, עברו ושובו משער לשער במחנה, והרגו איש את אחיו, ואיש את רעהו, ואיש את קרובו, ויעשו בני לוי כדבר משה, ויפול מן העם ביום ההוא כ3,000 איש. ויאמר משה, מילאו ידכם היום ליהוה, כי איש בבנו ובאחיו, ולתת עליכם היום ברכה. אוקיי. ויהי ממחרת, ויאמר משה אל העם, אתם חטאתם חטאה גדולה, ותעלה אל יהוה, אולי אכפרה בעד חטאתכם. Verse 31. Why? ישב משה אל יהוה, ויאמר, אנא חטא העם הזה חטאה גדולה, ויעשו להם אלוהי זהב, ועתה אם תישא חטאתם, ואם אין מחני נא מספרך אשר כתבת. Right, so Moshe lays it out before God. יאמר יהוה אל משה, מי אשר חטא לי אמחנו בספרי, ואתה לך נחה את העם אל אשר דיברתי לך. הנה מלאכי ילך לפניך, וביום פקדי ופקדתי עליהם חטאתם. יהוה את העם על אשר עשו את העגל אשר עשה אהרון. All right, lots of part there, but we'll leave it till later. וידבר יהוה אל מלך עלי מזה אתה ועם שהיית מארץ מצרים אל הארץ אשר נתתי לאברהם, לישחק וליעקב, לאמור לזרעך אתננה, ושלחתי לפניך מלאך, וגירשתי את הכנעני, האמורי, החיתי, הפריזי, החיובי, היבוסי, ones who were in charge of Jerusalem, אל ארץ זבת חלב ודבש, כי לא אעלה בקרבך, כי עם קשה עורף אתה פן אכלך בדרך. Oh boy, a lot to pick apart there. All right. So, alrighty. וישמע העם את הדבר הרע הזה, ויתאבלו, ויתאבלו, ולא שתו איש אדיו עליו. ויאמר יהוה אל משה, אמור אל בני ישראל, אתם עם קשה עורף, רגע אחד אעלה בקרבך וכליתיך, ואתה חורד עדיך מעליך, ואדעה מה אעשה לך. וינצלו בני ישראל את עדיים מהר חורב. אוקיי. ומשה ייקח את האוהל ונטע לו מחוץ למחנה, הרחק מן המחנה, וקרא לו אוהל מועד, והיה כל מבקש יהוה יצא אל אוהל מועד, אשר מחוץ למחנה. והיה קצת משה אל האוהל, יקומו כל העם ונצבו איש פתח אוהלו, והביטו אחרי משה עד בוא האוהלה. והיה כבוא משה האוהלה, וירד עמוד הענן, ועמד פתח האוהל, ודיבר עם משה. וראה כל העם את עמוד הענן עומד פתח האוהל, וקם כל העם וישתחוו איש פתח אוהלו. וידבר יהוה אל משה פנים אל פנים, כאשר ידבר איש אל רעהו, ושב אל המחנה, ומשרתו יהושע בן נון נער לא ימיש מתוך האוהל. So I see one thing here. Okay. Alrighty, so we are now in Exodus 33, verse 12. Exodus 33, verse 12. Alrighty, ויאמר משה אל יהוה, ראה, אתה אומר אלי, העל את העם הזה, ואתה לא הודעתני את אשר תשלח עמי, ואתה אמרת ידעתיך בשם, וגם מצאת חן בעיני, ואתה אם נא מצאתי חן בעיניך, והודיעני נא את דרכיך, ואדעך למען אמצא חן בעיניך, וראה כי עמך הגוי הזה. ויאמר פני ילכו, והני חוטא לך. ויאמר אליו, אם אין פניך הולכים, אל תעלנו מזה. במה יוועדה איפה כי מצאתי חן בעיניך, אני ועמך, הלא בלכתך עמנו, ונפלנו אני ועמך מכל העם אשר על פני האדמה. ויאמר יהוה אל משה, גם את הדבר הזה אשר דיברת אעשה, כי מצאת חן בעיני ואדעך בשם, ויאמר הראיני נא את כבודך, ויאמר אני אעביר כל טובי על פניך, וקראתי בשם יהוה לפניך, וחנותי את אשר אחון, וריחמתי את אשר ארחם. ויאמר לא תוכל לראות את פניי, כי לא יראני אדם וחי. ויאמר יהוה, הנה מקום איתי, וניצבת על הצור, והיה עבור כבודי, ושמתיך בנקרת הצור, וסקותי כפי עליך עד עברי, והסיר אותי את כפי, וראית את אחורי, ופניי לא יראו. Okay. Verse 34. So, okay, so we're going up to 34, 35. So basically this entire chapter. It's a long one, this parsha. All right, so now the tablets are replaced. Moshe returned them to Amazon, and Amazon is now sending a replacement. Okay, ויאמר יהוה אל משה, פסל לך שני לוחות אבנים כראשונים, וכתבתי על הלוחות את הדברים אשר היו על הלוחות הראשונים, אשר שיברת, וחיה נכון לבוקר, ועלית בבוקר אל הר סיני, וניצבת לי שם על ראש ההר, ואיש לא יעלה עמך, וגם איש אל יירא בכל ההר, גם הצאן והבקר אל יראו אל מול ההר ההוא. ויפסול שני לוחות האבנים הראשונים, וישכם משה בבוקר, ויעל אל הר סיני, כאשר ציווה יהוה אותו. ויקח בידו שני לוחות אבנים, וירד יהוה בענן, ויתייצב עמו שם, ויקרא בשם יהוה. ויעבור יהוה על פניו, ויקרא יהוה אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד, ואמת, נוסר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטאה, ונקה לא ינקה, פוקד עוון אבות על בונים ועל בני בונים, על שלישים ועל רבעים, וימהר משה ויקוד ארצה, וישתחו, ויאמר אם נא מצאתי חן בעיניך אדוני, ילך נא אדוני בקרבנו, כי עם קשה עורף הוא, וסלחת לעווננו ולחטאותינו ונחלתנו. So Moshe is really working on God, right? He's really kind of, buttering him up to get God to forgive Israel from the whole golden calf incident. Verse 10, ויאמר הנה אנוכי כורת ברית נגד כל עמך, אעשה נפלאות אשר לא נבראו בכל הארץ ובכל הגויים, וראה כל העם אשר אתה בקרבו את מעשה יהוה, כי נורא הוא אשר אני עושה עמך. שמר לך את אשר אנוכי מצווך היום, הנני גורש מפניך את האמורי, והכנעני, והחיתי, והפריזי, והחיובי, והיבוסי. ישמר לך פן תכרות ברית ליושב הארץ אשר אתה בא עליה, פן יהיה מוקש בקרבך, כי את מזבחותם תתוצון, ואת מעשבותם תשברון, ואת אשרהו תכרותון, כי לא תשתחווה לאל אחר, כי יהוה קנה שמו, אל קנה הוא. Yehovah Kana Shemo, right? So now God says his name is Yehovah Kana, right? But really his name is Yehovah, right? But he's now, I guess, emphasizing, or how should we say, this is his nickname, right? Or his name is Yehovah, but he's a jealous Yehovah, right? A lot more we could say about that this afternoon. Okay. Pen tichrod brit, so in verse 15. Pen tichrod brit liyoshev haaretz, u'zanu acharei Eloheim, u'zavachu לאלוהים, וקרא לך, ואכלת מזבחו, ולקחת מבנותיו לבניך, וזנו בנותיו אחרי אלוהיהן, ויזנו את בניך אחרי אלוהיהן. One second. Okay, Elohei Masecha lo ta'aseh לך. Verse 18, at Chag HaMatzot, so all of a sudden now we have Chag HaMatzot, okay. At Chag HaMatzot, תשמור שבעת ימים תאכל מעשות אשר ציוויתיך למועד חודש האביב, כי בחודש האביב יצאת ממצרים. So now we get more laws all of a sudden, right? So let's look at the context here. So in verse 10, ויאמר הנה אנוכי כורת ברית נגד כל עמך ועשה נפלאות אשר לא נבראו בכל מצרים בכל הארץ ובכל הגויים. So God said he's now creating a covenant, right? And he's going to expel all of the inhabitants of the land of Canaan. And then we just get a number of laws here, which seem almost random, right? It's kind of strange. But let's see if there's some kind of theme here. Well, we have Chag HaMatzot, and then we have again the Shabbat. And more holidays. Okay, I don't know, I'm just going to read. Okay, at Chag HaMatzot, so we're in verse 18. At Chag HaMatzot תשמור שבעת ימים תאכל מצות אשר ציוויתיך למועד חודש האביב, כי בחודש האביב יצאת ממצרים. כל פטר רחם לי וכל מקנך תזכר פטר שור ועשה. ופטר חמור תפדה בשא, ואם לא תפדה וערפתו, כל בכור בעניך תפדה ולא יראו פני ריקם. Verse 21, ששת ימים תעבוד, וביום השביעי תשבות, בחריש וחציר תשבות. Right, so here's another interesting piece of information. In the Katsir, in the Harish and the Katsir, in the plowing time, and in the gathering time, right? You know that's Chag Sukkot is called also Chag Katsir. So around Sukkot time, when you're bringing all of the harvest of this season, you still have to not work on the Shabbat, right? V'Chag Shavuot ta'aseh lecha, ביקורי קציר חיטים, וחג האסיף תקופת השנה. 3 פעמים בשנה יראה כל זכורך את פני האדון יהוה אלוהי ישראל. כי אוריש גויים מפניך, והרחבתי את גבולך, ולא יחמוד איש את ארצך, בעלותך לראות את פני יהוה אלוהיך 3 עמים בשנה. לא תשחט על חמץ דם זבחי, ולא ילין לבוקר זבח חג הפסח. ראשית ביקורי אדמתך תביא בית יהוה אלוהיך, לא תבשל גדי בחלב עמו. So is there any connection here? Verse 26. ראשית ביקורי אדמתך תביא בית יהוה אלוהיך, לא תבשל גדי בחלב עמו. Right? These occur in the same verse. Is there any connection here? ראשית ביקורי אדמתך תביא בית יהוה. So the first fruits of your land you shall bring to the house of Yehovah, your God. Lo tivashel gedi b'chalev imo, and do not seethe a kid in its mother's milk. In its mother's milk. I don't know. We'll go on. Yomer Yehovah el Moshe ktav lecha et hadavarim ha'ele ki al pi hadavarim ha'ele karati itcha brit wa et Yisrael wa hi sham im Yehovah 40 יום ו40 לילה, לחם לא אכל ומים לא שתה, ויכתוב על לוחות את דברי הברית 10 הדברים. All right, let's go on. ויהי ברד משה מהר סיני. So now Moshe goes up the second time, and he's up there another 40 days and 40 nights, right? And he gets another second pair of tablets. Set it to Devarim, and 10 things, right? 10 sentences are written on these tablets. One second here. One second. I just had an idea that I want to look at myself. One second. I don't know. One second. Just an idea that maybe the things that were written on the second tablets are these things that we're reading right here, and not the original 10 commandments. And I'm trying to count up and see there are 10 things, but it's kind of hard to count. Well, let's try it, just for the heck of it. So let's go back here. In verse 10, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I'm going to make a covenant. And then verse 11, so I'm going to expel all the inhabitants of the land of Canaan. Don't make any kind of covenant with them. One second. So this would seem to be in contrast. God is making a covenant, a brit, now with the people, and he's saying, don't make any covenant. I'm going to expel the people. Don't make any covenant with them. One second. So that's not clear. Hagamatzot tishmor. So that would be one. Kol peterechem. This would be two. Sheshit yamim ta'avod. So this would be three. Chag Shvuot Taseh is all together. Lo tishchat hachametz. That would be four. Reshit bikurei admatcha tavi. That would be five. לא תבשל גידי בחלב אמו, that would be 6. ויאמר יהוה אל משה כתב. No, I don't know, it doesn't add up. Unless we break this up, I don't know. It was just a thought. Let's go on. We can talk about it this afternoon. Waihi baredet Moshe mihar Sinai. Because you understand the problem here. It seems like, so what does Moshe say? I'm sorry, what does God say? ראשונים וכתבתי על לוחות את הדברים אשר היו על... okay, I'm sorry. No, so it's very clear. Okay? כתבתי על הלוחות את הדברים אשר היו על הלוחות הראשונים אשר שיברת. Okay, so forget that. Thought canceled. There it says very clearly that God is going to, his intention is to write the same things that were written on the first ones. So the Aseret Dibrot, or the Aseret Devarim that are written on the second ones are clearly the 10 Commandments of Exodus 20. Okay. It was an idea. I like to go with ideas and thoughts and see where they lead. Alrighty. So, there we go. Okay. ויהי ברד משה מהר סיני ושני לוחות העדות ביד משה ברדתו מן ההר ומשה לא ידע כי let's see what the vowels on that one, but קרן עוד אור פניו בדברו איתו ויער אחרון וכל בני ישראל את משה והנה קורן אור פניו ויראו מגשת עליו ויקרא עליהם משה וישובו אליו אהרון וכל הנשיאים בעדה וידבר משה עליהם ואחרי כן ניגשו כל בני ישראל ויצווים את כל אשר דיבר יהוה איתו בהר סיני ויכל משה מדבר איתם ויתן על פניו מסווה ובבואו משה לפני יהוה לדבר איתו יסיר את המסווה עד צאתו ויצא ודיבר אל בני ישראל את אשר יצווה וראו בני ישראל את פני משה כקרן אור פני משה והשיב משה את המסווה על פניו עד בואו לדבר איתו. All right. And that is the end of the Parsha. Alrighty. Well, where do we even begin? So we have about another half an hour or so before I'll end the morning study, and then we can, of course, pick it up later on. One second here. Okay, we should be back on. Sorry about that. We had some internet problems here. Well, there is so much to say about this parsha that I don't even know where to begin. So we can break. First of all, sound check. Does everybody hear me now? You should be able to hear me. Let me share the screen again. Where are we? Okay, so we can kind of break up this parsha into two sections, right? Oops. Let me close this off. Close this off. So if we go back to Exodus 30, so this is the, oh my God, there's so much to say. This is the end of basically the Mishkan, right? The building of the Mishkan, up until, I guess you could say, basically the end of Exodus 30, or maybe even include this chapter, right? That's Bezalel and Holiab are named as the head craftsmen. Then we have the Shabbat. Then we have the entire golden calf incident. And then Moshe trying to convince God not to destroy Israel. So let's pick it up. I think maybe we can do a little bit more about the Mishkan this afternoon. Let's pick it up here when Moshe receives the tablets. Okay? And we'll try to see if we can make some sense out of it. Okay, so that would be chapters, oh boy, still a lot. So 30, 31, 32, going up to 34, right? I said. Yeah, it's a long parsha, 30, 31, 32, 33. It's 5 chapters. But we'll try to pick it up from here and see if we can make sense out of what's going on here, okay? So the Israelites are still at Mount Sinai, okay, at the foot of the mountain. Moshe has been up there for 40 days. We saw that in Exodus 24, he and Yehoshua were called up for 40 days. Aaron and Hur, who is the grandfather of Bezalel, were left behind with the Israelites, and the Israelites are getting a little bit impatient, which is absolutely shocking and surprising based on the way that Israelis act in Israel when they're waiting on a line. I'm completely shocked that the Israelites would be impatient. I can't even imagine it, because Israelis, as anyone knows, like they like to wait, online very patiently and quietly, and they stand in a straight line, right? That's a joke for anyone who's been to Israel. Okay, so verse 18, Wayiten el Moshe ki chalato lidaber ito behar Sinai shnei luchot ha'idut luchot even ketuvim be'etzba Elohim. So now Moshe gets the 2 tablets. Okay, remember we found actual footage of that.
Moses went to the mountain. This is the Lord thy God commanding you to obey my law. Do you hear me? Yes, I hear you.
Okay, all right. The joke only works once. At any rate, so Moshe is now receiving these tablets. Okay, this was when Moshe was called up to the mountain in Exodus 24. We saw that God said he would give them the tablets, right? Let's just find that for a second. So this is Exodus 24, verse 12. Yomer Yehovah el Moshe, ale elai hahara v'hayeh sham ve'etneh lecha et luchot ha'even v'hatorah v'hamitzvah asher katafti lehorotam. So what is he going to do? So Yehovah is now calling up Moshe to the mountain, and he says, I'm going to give you the luchot ha'even, the stone tablets, and the Torah and the mitzvah asher katafti lehorotam. And on top of it, Torah and mitzvot, which I've written down. So is that talking about the 10 commandments written on the tablets? Is that talking about, in addition to it, things that ended up being the Torah scroll? Probably the latter, but again, it's not 100% clear. Let's take a look out of curiosity. I'm curious to see what are various commentators that we often go to. I should find some more commentators rather than relying on Robert Alter all the time, although I do like his style. Okay, so that's Exodus 24. I'm just curious to see what he says. And I often agree with him. Sometimes I disagree with him, but I always like to hear what he has to say. So, Exodus 24, 12. And he doesn't even have, oh, that's Genesis. Whoops. Let's try this again. Exodus 24. Chapter 12. Okay, although often repeated, Devarim words imply speech. Dibur, the central event of the giving of the law, places a strong stress on the act of writing as the vehicle for endowing words with permanence. Moses writes down the words and laws, presumably with ink on parchment or papyrus. God now declares he will do his own inscription, presumably of the 10 words, in the durable medium of stone. So that's interesting. So the point is that clearly, according to Robert Alter, he interprets what's being said in verse 12 that this phrase over here, right? So he seems to be implying that this Torah and the mitzvah, these instructions and commandments, will be written down by Moshe on a scroll, and that only the 10 commandments is what's being written on the stone tablets. Well, that we know, but the point is that these words Torah and mitzvah are referring to things beyond the 10 commandments, which then Moshe will write down on a parchment. Okay, perhaps that's kind of the way I see it as well. All right. I won't even bother with Rashi on this one because it'll just confuse us even more. Okay, let's go back then to Exodus 31. So this is where this is actually being carried out now, right? So now Moshe is getting those stone tablets. Vayiten el Moshe kechalato lidaber ito behar Sinai shnei luchot ha'idut luchot even ketuvim ba'etzba Elohim. So now Moshe is getting the 2 tablets. And Luchot Even Ktuvim Be'etzba Elohim. And they were written with the hand of God. With the hand of God. Okay? So here, let's go to, let's see, Rashi mentions it. Double my donation. Okay, so this is going to be, oops. Where is it? Rashi. Exodus 31. Okay, and we're in 31. Where is it? 18. All right, just to save time, I'll read in the English rather than doing my own translation from the Hebrew. Tin and Moshe, there is no earlier or later in the events related in the Torah. In fact, the incident of the golden calf happened a considerable time before the command regarding the work of the tabernacle was given. I'm not sure what his evidence for that is. For on the 17th, the Tammuz were the tablets broken when the people were glad. On the Day of Atonement, God came, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Nonsense. All right, forget that. I don't think there's any evidence for most of what he's saying here. On the 17th day of Tammuz, so they're saying the 17th day of Tammuz because that's mentioned in the Tanakh regarding Jerusalem later on. The Day of Atonement came, God became reconciled. Okay. Let And this is nonsense. All right, so it doesn't have here what I'm looking for at all. Okay, this is nonsense too. All right, forget it. I'm not going to waste my time with Rashi. All right, let's go on to Exodus 32. The golden calf. Okay, Yar Ha'am Ki Boshesh Moshe. So Boshesh, right. So the word is based on the root bash, which means to be ashamed. But what is the connection with to delay? And I'd like to see that. Bashashu, Boshesh. Delay and shame, the BDB says. Okay, so perfect. Boshesh, delay and shame. Boshesh Moshe Laredet, Moshe delayed to descend. So it's relating it back to this Boshesh, to be embarrassed. But I don't know if it's used as delayed. Any delay. Let's go back to it. Let's see what Robert Alter has to say about that one. So we are now in Exodus. This is 32:1. I bet he translates it differently. Oops. Okay. I thought that would. How do I get rid of this now? Okay. Exodus 32. Lagged. These words bring us back to the concrete narrative situation at the end of chapter 24, right? As we mentioned, for the long interruption of the cultic law, Moses had disappeared into the numinous. The heck does numinous mean? Volk, do you know what numinous means? Foggy? You know, like cumulonimbus. Okay, got it. Cloud on the mountaintop. The people, awestruck, waited at the foot of the mountain, glimpsing the flashes of fire from the cloud above. It is understandable that after 40 days they should wonder whether Moshe would ever return, and they should be terrified at the idea of being stranded in the wilderness without the leader on whom they had been entirely dependent. That's true. Okay. Alrighty. So yeah. All right. So again, the BDB connects this word boshesh with shame. In other words, he was shamefully late, I guess you can translate it as. It's kind of a strange word to use there. Should be more like hitmamea, delay and shame. Exodus 32, Judges. So it's also in Judges 5:28. So that's with whatchamacallit. Why does the name escape me all of a sudden? Sisera. Let's take a look at that for a second. So Judges 5:28. How do I do this? Go here. And then I can go into the Hebrew. So this is after Sisera was killed by Yael. with the tent peg, right? Famous story in the previous chapter. Right? Yeah, Sisera with the tent peg, fulfilling the prophecy that Devorah gave to Barak, that salvation would come through a woman. And 28? Okay, so this is the poem that or the song of victory, the victory song that Devorah and Barak sing. And so they're speaking here about Sisera's mom, who's waiting for her son to come back with the spoils of war, but unfortunately he's dead with a tent peg through his head. So that ain't happening. All right. Ba'ad Haron Nishkafa. Well, let's go back. Where's it mention his mother? Sisera. There it is. Mentions the mother right there. So through the window, looked and cried out, Sisera, Sisera's mother, Ba'ad ha'ishnab, through the lattice. They usually translate ishnab as Madua boshesh richbo. Why is his blade that we see in Exodus 32 from Moshe coming down from the mountain? Ya'ar ha'am ki boshesh Moshe. Okay, why is chariot? So shall we say, shamefully late? Maybe would be a better translation. Why is this chariot shamefully late? Lavod, in coming. Madua echarum pa'ameh mar kivotav. Why have the footsteps of his chariots? Why have the footsteps of his chariots come so late, or why are they so delayed? Chachamot. Okay, so we won't even go on. And then it goes on to speak about. I love this poem. Speak about how his mother is waiting for him, and Shalom, waiting. And so shall all of your enemies be destroyed, Yehovah, with their mothers sitting at the window, waiting for them to come back, but they're dead with a tent peg through their heads, and the mother is going to soon find out that her son, her evil son, is gone. So shall all of your enemies be destroyed, Yehovah. And those who love you, like the coming out of the sun, bigvurato, in its strength, what tishkot haaretz 40 shana, and then the land was quiet for 40 years. So that's that. So the point is in verse 25, was it? No, it was 28. So we see the word boshesh used for the delay of the chariots of Sisera in the poem, the victory poem that Barak and Devorah are singing. So that seems to be the only other use of the word in that sense. Let's see. Where were we? So we have to go back here. Tink. Back one more. And again. Right. So Judges 5:28. Okay. You should shame. I'm trying to see if there's anywhere else that it's used in terms of being late. Okay, I think we get the idea. There's more to see. All right, so let's leave it at that. So Moshe was late in coming down, was shamefully late. I wonder if some other translations pick up on the shamefully. It's like the Everett Fox. So this is Exodus 20:32-1. There we go. That's exactly how Everett Fox translates it. Now, when the people saw that Moshe was shamefully late in coming down from the mountain. Okay. So that's the connection between shameful and late. All right. ويكهل העם al Aharon ויאמרו אליו. So who was left in charge? We said Aaron. So of Bezalel, who's the head artisan on the tabernacle project, and Hur is also the one who held up Moshe's hand together with was it Yeshua, Aaron? I believe it was Yeshua at that point. No, Yeshua was out fighting the battle. There's Aaron, and Hur held up Moshe's hand in the battle against the Amalekites that we saw earlier in Exodus. So so here's Aaron was left in charge. ויאמרו אליו, קום, עשה לנו אלוהים. So now the nation is getting really jittery and upset, and they want a God. And I actually like Robert Alter's comment here. Let's read that again. Moshe had disappeared into the numinous cloud on the mountaintop. The people, awestruck, waited at the foot of the mountain, glimpsing the flash of the fire from the cloud above. And here, it is understandable that after 40 days, they should wonder whether Moshe would ever return, and that they should be terrified at the idea of being stranded in the wilderness without the leader on whom they have been entirely dependent. So these people are freaking out, basically, right? They have no idea where this Moshe disappeared. It's not even clear that he told them how long he was going to be up on the mountain. Maybe he didn't even know how long he was going to be up on the mountain. Actually, I think it mentions it earlier. But maybe the people didn't know how long. So now it's 5 weeks later, essentially 5.5 weeks later. It's like a month and a half later, and this Moshe's gone. Right? What happened to him? Did he disappear into the cloud? With the fire eat him up? Did he ascend to heaven? Did he just go down the other side of the mountain and go vacation in I don't know, Dubai or Tel Aviv or something like that? Who knows? Nobody knows where this guy went. He's gone. So the people are freaking out. And so that kind of explains their actions. I mean, it's not cool what they did, but I guess understandable, right? So they say, "Aseh lanu Elohim asher yilchu lefanenu." So now they want some other God that's going to lead them, right? They're stranded in the desert, as Robert Alter said, right? Imagine just being stranded in the desert. I don't know if you've ever been stranded in the desert or in a forest, but it's not a pleasant feeling. I had an incident many years ago when I did a trip across the country from New York to California. I drove from New York. I went to a Karaite conference actually down in Arkansas. And then from there, I continued on and drove all the way out to California. And I was in eastern Arizona on the farm of some people who've since become friends. And I took a walk one day. So they lived on a farm in the middle of nowhere. I mean, like the nearest neighbor was a couple of miles away. And in eastern Arizona, the entire landscape, it's basically brush. I think they have what they call sage bush, and they have agave, and everything looks exactly the same from every single direction. And I was walking on the road from their house out to kind of what was like an overhang or an overlook over a valley below. And on the path, I went off to do my business, and then I realized that I had no idea where the path was. And it was a very narrow path. It was just like a path cut in the woods. And every direction that I looked in looked exactly the same. And I had no idea where the path was. And I started to freak out, basically. And my first reaction in this panic was to start running around looking desperately for the path. Okay. And before I did it, maybe I did it a little drop, I don't remember. I think before I did it at all, I stopped myself and I say, if I do that, I'm only going to go deeper. I'm going to only get more mired in this situation. Okay, so I stopped myself and I said, okay, I have to approach this logically. I know I only walked maybe at the most 25, 30 feet from the path. It's around here somewhere. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the point where I'm standing, and then I'm going to go in one direction about 50 feet and look for the path carefully. And if I don't see it, I'm going to come back to that point, and then I'm going to go at a 90-degree angle. Okay, so I'd go, let's say, due south first. I didn't know what due south was, but I'd go, we'll pretend it's due south. I'd go due south about 50 feet, looking for the path. If I see it, great. If I don't see it, I turn around 180 degrees and come back to this point that I've marked. And then I go due west 50 feet, looking for the path. And if I find it, great. If I don't, I come back to the original point, and then I go due north 50 feet, et cetera, maybe 100 feet, 200 feet, whatever it was. Okay, and I did that. And I was able to find the path. and get back to the farm. And the situation was not just it was not just a an unpleasant situation. It would have been potentially very, very dangerous because the sun was setting. And in eastern Arizona, this was in maybe October or something like that. So in eastern Arizona, out in the middle of nowhere, it's warm during the day. It can get up into the 60s or even the 70s during the day, Fahrenheit. But at night, it gets down into the teens. It would get down to like 15 degrees at night. I mean, frigid, frigid, frigid cold. And the sun was setting. It was still warm out. I didn't have any jacket or anything like that. So if I had not found my way back to the path, it would have soon been dark. Within an hour or two, it would have been dark. And it would have been, and that night it would have been down the teens, without a doubt, without any doubt whatsoever, aside from a miracle, I would have frozen to death. So the situation was very, very serious. And I thank God I got my head about me and found a way out of that. Because if I had started running around like a chicken without its head, that would have been the end of me for sure. I would have been on the news the next day as a a lost hiker. Okay, so that being said, let's get back to. So what was the point? The point was that the Israelites are here in the middle of the desert. Okay, they're not alone, and it's not freezing, I guess, or if it is, they have the equipment. But still, they have no idea. They were on their way to the land of Israel, and all of a sudden, this Moshe guy just disappears off the face of the earth. It's a month and a half later, and they have no idea what's going on. So it's understandable that they should start to freak out. Okay, and I think that's maybe one of the reasons why Yehovah forgives them. All right, we're gonna go a little while longer. And then I'm going to stop, maybe another 5 minutes or so, and then we'll stop and we'll pick it up this afternoon. So, so to take the place of the God, so they want a God who's going to lead them, who's going to go before them, because Moshe, who was the one who was leading them, or through God, interacting with God, leading them together, is gone, right? And God is gone too. He's up on the mountain. Maybe they see the cloud and the fire, but they have no idea what's going on with them. Okay. Because this man Moshe, who brought us up from Egypt, we have no idea what happened to him. Okay, so this man, all of a sudden it's like impersonal. This dude, this guy who brought us up. And I think actually Robert Alter picks up on that. I'll read some of his comments here. Here and repeatedly in the Golden Calf episode, Elohim, which regularly refers to God in the singular, is used in the plural. Right, we spoke about it earlier, and we'll say that again. Despite all the spectacular demonstrations of the Lord's supreme power, the people have not liberated themselves from the polytheistic notions. Go before us points to the urgently felt need for God guide through the wilderness, which should have been Moses, or more pointedly, the divine messenger God designated to lead Israel. The phrase is also a military idiom suggesting leadership in battle. What is? Okay, that go before us. Okay, true. Okay, okay, nice comment. This man Moses, it is noteworthy that the most ordinary of terms, man, becomes a kind of epithet for Moses, perhaps intimating the distance of the puzzlement or wonder with which others regard him. Just before the 10th plague, we were told that the man Moses too is very great in the land of Egypt. Now, this man Moses is an object of exasperation and perplexity for the Israelites. The connection with the passage at the beginning of chapter 11 is reinforced by Aaron's request for the golden earrings, since the borrowing of gold and silver ornaments is mentioned in the same section of chapter 11. An interesting comment. Not sure if I go for that one, but interesting. Okay. So let's go back. Well, we'll read ahead a little bit. The word fashioned in a mold, the word represented as mold, heret, usually means stylus, but incising would not normally have been part of the process of making a molded image. Some scholars relate both the verb and the noun to entirely different roots that yield the sense wrapped it in a bag, but that reading is quite strained. Perhaps a term associated with a different image-making process was then applied idiomatically to all kinds of metalwork image making. In any case, Aaron is pointedly represented as fashioning the image, an idea that may have been enforced by the use of the term heret in blatant contradiction to the comically lame excuse he will make to Moses. I flung it into the fire and out came this calf. Okay. All right, let's get back here. So, right. Verse 2. Yomer alehem Aaron Parku nizmeh hazahav. Okay, take off, remove, take down, break off. In modern Hebrew, lifarik is to break. Nizmeh zahav, the golden rings. So nezim is, I guess, just a ring in general, earring. Asher ba'aznei nashechem, which are in the ears of your women, your sons, and your daughters. So proving that the sons wore earrings in among the ancient Israelites, right? It's not just a punk 1980s teenagers that wore earrings. In the ancient times, the sons and the daughters wore earrings, both the sons and the daughters. Verse 3, so they take all their golden earrings off and give it to Aaron. So he created it with right. So cheret is harut, means to be chiseled or engraved, and that's exactly what Robert Alter says. So now let's take a look at his comment. The word represented as mold heret usually means stylus, but incising would not normally have been part of the process of making a molten image. Some scholars relate both the verb and the noun to entirely different roots and yield the sense wrapped in a bag. Okay, I'm not going to belabor that. We already read that. So somehow or another, they made egel masecha. So a masecha is a molten or molded. They translated here. Even let's look at this word a little bit more. Egel masecha. So BDB says molten metal or image. Egel masecha, molten. Right. So it's comes from the underlying verb nesech or nasach. So nasach is to pour, right? As in, for instance, the wine sacrifice. Let's find an example here. One second. Yeah, with nesach lo tisku elav. Okay, so it's a drink offering. So nasach, linsoch, is to pour. Okay, so going back to here, so masecha comes from the same root nasach. So masecha is a molten, right? It's a poured, it's a molded image. Okay, so I don't want to. There's so much else to cover here, so I don't want to. Get stuck on this, but we had saroto b'cheret. So cheret we saw is somehow has to do with engraving or engraving tool or a stylus. Well, it only appears in two places. Tovala b'cheret enosh lemaher. Saroto b'cheret. Okay, so some kind of engraving tool. So if we take this literally, kach mi'adam yitzaroto, and he created it. So he took these golden earrings from them. And he made it, and he used an engraving tool. He created it with an engraving tool, v'yaseu egel masecha, and made it into a molten calf. Okay? And an egel specifically so calf would be a baby cow, right? So we're talking specifically about a cow. Okay. So somehow he used an engraving tool and made a molten calf. So maybe he made the molten calf and then engraved upon it. Let's read it again. Vayikach mi'adam yitzar oto b'cheret. Ya'su egel masecha v'yomru ele Elohecha Yisrael. Okay. So somehow maybe he made it into a molten calf and then engraved upon it. At any rate, "Uyamru ele Elohecha Yisrael." These are your gods in the plural. Israel asher he'elucha. Again, the plural. Eretz Mitzrayim. We mentioned this earlier. So even though Elohim, when speaking about Yehovah, speaking about the one and only God, is usually paired with singular verbs. Here, it's paired with plural verbs. So these are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. Kind of a strange statement when you think of it, because we know that God was the one who brought, Yehovah was the one who brought Israel up out of Egypt. And now Moshe is saying, these are your gods who brought you up out of Egypt. Okay? So is this some kind of syncretism? No, I'm sorry, not Moses. Aaron is saying that. So is Aaron implying that this is a representation of Yehovah? Is this like syncretism, whereby the idol represents the God Yehovah, who they saw bring them up out of Egypt? They're now just Aaron is now trying to appease the people or calm the people by giving Yehovah an actual image that they can see and feel and touch, because the only thing, what's that? No, it's clearly not sarcasm at all, not based on the context. No. Is it? So I think what's going on is they had this, Moshe represented a leader who they could see and feel and touch, right? They could interact with. He's gone. So now they need something muchashi. They need something, tangible that can take the place of Moshe, who kind of represented Yehovah. So I think maybe that's what's going on, right? It does remind me of, I think we're going to end now, but let's just end with one thing. So all right. So let's just let's just talk about this inscription. So further evidence of Asherah worship includes, for example, an 8th century BC combination of iconography and inscriptions discovered at Kuntelet Arjud in the northern Sinai desert, where a storage jar shows 3 anthropomorphic figures and several inscriptions. The inscriptions found refer not only to Yahweh, but to El and Baal, and include two include the phrases Yahweh of Samaria and his Asherah, and Yahweh of Teman and his Asherah. So I'm just trying to find this. What's that? At this point, yes. All right, so let's read this. This is from Audits. And we'll end after reading this. Okay, more than 4 decades after its excavation wound down, a small hill in the Sinai desert continues to bedevil archaeologists. The extraordinary discoveries made at Kuntilet Arjud, an otherwise nondescript slope in the northern Sinai, seem to undermine one of the very foundations of Judaism as we know it. Bullshit, but at any rate, that's Ha'aretz, they're very left wing. Then it seems the Lord our God wasn't one God. He may have even had a wife, going by the completely unique portrait of the Jewish deity that archaeologists found at the site, which may well be the only existing depiction of Yehovah. Kuntelet Arjud got its name, meaning the isolated hill of the water sources, from wells at the foot of the hill. It is a remote spot in the heart of the desert, far away from any town or trade route, but for a short time, around 3,000 years ago, it served as a small way station. Dozens of drawings and inscriptions resembling nothing whatever found anywhere else in our region survived from that period, which seems to have lasted no longer than 2 or 3 decades. Egypt gained the artifacts with the peace treaty with Israel 25 years ago, but the release of the report on the excavation 6 years ago and a book about the site 2 years ago have kept the argument over the exceptional findings from the hill in Sinai alive. Here they are. So you can see, let's see where you can find it. There's Yud Hey Wav Hey. Wow Hey. All right, we'll read on. The hill lies 50 kilometers south of Kadesh Barnea and 15 kilometers west of the ancient Dar al-Gaza route, which led from Gaza to the Red Sea's Gulf of Eilat. Its unique qualities were first noticed in 1870 by the British explorer Edward Palmer, who discovered a fragment of a clay jar, a pithos marked with the Hebrew letter Aleph. Later, in 1902, a Czech Orientalist and explorer, Aloy Musil, was attacked by local Bedouins who claimed that he was defiling a holy site. Exploration would only resume in 1975 by the Tel Aviv University archaeologist Zev Meshel as part of a collaboration between the university and the Israel Exploration Society. Excavation showed that Kuntilat Arjud was what's called a single-layer site, meaning it had been occupied for just one period, with the excavators dated to the late 9th century or early 8th century BCE. Meshel estimated that it had been occupied very briefly, 25 years at most. Structure-wise, the excavators only found two fairly simple, unimpressive structures. The wonder lay in drawings and inscriptions. So, ancient Hebrew writing on the rim of a bowl. At first, the archaeologists thought the place was a military fortress. Other fortresses from the First Temple period had been found in the Negev, but no evidence that there had been a military presence was found. And in the third excavation season, Meshel decided that the structures weren't that sort, nor would Kuntilat Arjud have been suitable as an inn for travelers. It was too small and was off the beaten track, nor did it seem to match any of the criteria of a trade station. The first hint at the true character of Kuntilat Arjud was the discovery of pottery fragments inscribed with ancient Hebrew letters Kuf, Resh, Aleph, and Yud. All right, I think we're going to end here because this article is going on too long. Maybe we'll pick it up this afternoon with this article. I want to end the morning study, and we will pick it up this afternoon, hopefully with this article. So I thank you all for joining. The afternoon study will start in about 2.5 hours from now, and we'll go into a more in-depth study of the Parsha. So thanks for joining, and I wish you all Shabbat Shalom in the meantime. Bye-bye.